Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'll be talking about the first 100-ish pages of This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein. First of all, the full title of this book is This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate. And that's pretty much where we dive straight in. Global trade is in direct conflict with any kind of climate protections that we have tried to put into place. There also seems to be a lot of passing the buck, where some of the fast-growing emerging economies like China and India are taking more of the responsibility for high emissions than they maybe are actually responsible for. So, for example, those two countries in particular put out a lot of emissions that are the result of products that will be exported to the West. So, in doing this, the West can say that they have lowered their emissions, mostly because they've just outsourced them to other countries. And the reason that they've done that is because it's cheaper to do so, and they get to look good because of it. She also mentions Big Green as being part of the problem as well, and I think it is interesting to see how nowadays we do have a lot more awareness of things, and there's like trends of minimalism and zero waste and all of that stuff, but there's also a lot of product ironically that goes behind that, and there's a lot of encouragement to buy more things in order to have a lower impact, which is super ironic and doesn't really make any sense, but feels very natural to the way that our society has been built and feels very natural to our conditioned tendencies, I think. The idea of people consuming less, although it is one of the best things that we can do to be greener, it is still in conflict with our dominant ideology of not just the West, but the world at this point. So it's easier to get people to just buy more, but just make it a different product, which is not really stopping the problem that we have. So as I'm reading all of this, I tend to automatically think, well, what are the things that I can do to help? And I want to change some of my habits to do better, basically. And there are definitely things that I know that I can do and things that can have a huge effect. But one just obvious reality is that individuals can only really do so much. We need governments to get behind climate protections in the way that they've gotten behind global trade, which means strict consequences for violations of climate protection to the same degree, or preferably more, than for violations to trade agreements. So today I was working on some freelancing stuff, and while I was working I decided to put on the documentary by Leonardo DiCaprio called Before the Flood, and it tied in really well to what I've been reading, and it kind of felt like the book definitely goes way deeper than any single documentary could, but it felt like a really good look at things from a global level and just touching on some of the things that were brought up in the book, and some of the people that were brought up in This Changes Everything are also people that come up in the film. And at one point when they were talking about developing nations taking on a lot of the consequences that they didn't actually create, it made me think a lot about where I'm from, the Bahamas, and how it is a tiny archipelago in the Caribbean that will definitely see more and more of the negative effects of climate change, even though the Bahamas is so small as to not have done anything to contribute to the problem that it is feeling the effects of. At the same time, though, I feel like it's spurring me on to want to do more now that I'm living in the United Kingdom, because that is a country that, although I think its global influence is definitely waning, especially in light of recent political things that have been happening, it still has a lot that it can do, and that it has a responsibility to do in trying to combat climate change. So now, as a resident of this country and someone who is able to vote and elicit more and more government change, that's something that I really want to get involved in more. And I'm looking for ways to do that. If you have any tips about things that you've maybe done in your country or city, please let me know, because I'm always looking for ideas of ways to get involved. And I thought it might be maybe interesting, hopefully, and also hopefully not at all preachy or anything like that, but just to chat about the things that I've been trying to do for the Low Impact Challenge throughout the month of May. I know that obviously not everybody can do the same things that everyone else is doing, because our situations are all very different. So it's not like a guide or like a pointing of the finger about what people should do or anything like that. It's just sort of what I'm looking at doing every day in my life, and maybe some of the things that come up are things that you might want to do. Or I don't know. I just thought it would be fun to share what I've been doing. And like I said, I don't want it to be like preachy or anything like that. At the end of the day, at an individual level like this, and like the things I'm about to mention, for the most part, all of those things are a drop in the bucket compared to what multinational corporations and governments should be doing and have a responsibility to do. And at the end of the day, it's them that are going to make the real impact on climate change rather than consumers. So, on to my things. Firstly, the easiest and laziest thing that I have been doing is just consuming less, which means doing literally absolutely nothing. Second thing that I've been doing is using my library even more. When I first moved to my town, my library was actually undergoing renovations, so I went to the next city over and registered for that library, but it means either driving there or getting the train there, or when I just happened to be there, I might pop into the library, though generally I just tended to use the audiobooks and ebooks on their website using my account. But then I realized that my local library has now finished all of its renovations, so I signed up last week with them, and that is where I borrowed This Changes Everything. The third thing that I'm doing this week is donating all of my rarely used bras to a charity called Against Breast Cancer, which redistributes the bras to women in developing nations who need them. Any bras that are given to the charity that are too worn for redistribution end up getting recycled. Number 4, as someone with a massive sweet tooth, I've decided that I'm going to only ever buy fair trade chocolate because, one, the fact that it'll cost like double the amount that regular chocolate does means that I will definitely be buying a lot less. And also, I feel kind of weird about like every time I have like a sweet treat or something like that, it's possible that that could have been harmful to someone else somewhere else in the world. And I mean, like, I feel like explaining this point has the potential to feel judgmental, and I really don't want it to, but that's just me explaining why that's there, because I think otherwise it just sounds a bit elitist when, I mean, it probably still is, I don't know, but I just, that's my thinking. I'm going to eat less chocolate because of it, and hopefully it'll be better for whoever is actually making that chocolate. And the fifth thing is that now I have been getting my fruit and veg from my local greengrocer instead of the supermarket. My greengrocer is actually on the way to the supermarket anyway, so that's really easy. We just stop off before or after we go to the supermarket for all of the other stuff that we need to buy. The people there are really nice. It's a quaint little shop. I did a drawing of it. I'll put it there. It just made sense for us. I know that not everyone will have that option, but if you do have that option, then I don't know, maybe consider it, because I think I had previously just sort of done what was convenient, but I think I prefer this arrangement now, even though it's slightly less convenient to do 2 stops for my weekly groceries rather than just 1, but I don't mind. I know this format was really different and kind of weird for me to do, and I'm not sure that I quite like how I've set this out yet. I'll have to think about that. If you have any constructive criticism to add, I wholeheartedly welcome it, because I want this to be like a sharing of information, but also not preachy, and also just like some things I learned basically, and going through this book at a slower pace than I usually. Well, no, it's not a slower pace than I usually read books, because I read books really, really slowly, but going through this book with you in a slower way than I normally go through books. I don't know if that's boring or not, but that's what I'm trying this month. Instead of doing my April wrap-up now, I'll probably do that joined with May at the end of this month. And one last thing that I'd like to say is I really recommend watching the documentary that I mentioned earlier, Before the Flood, by Leonardo DiCaprio. It's really good. It's slightly depressing, but I think important to know those things, and there are some tips at the end about how to lower your impact if that's something that you're looking to do at all. And it looks at things globally, which I think obviously in this sort of situation is necessary. And that's it for me for today. I'll see you again at the end of next week, and hopefully this will be a little bit better organized by then, and maybe if there's any tips about how I could make this better, then I will try to implement them in the next one. And I'll see you then. Bye.